Welcome to more Bound by Flame with me, Oni Black Mage. Alright, so we're still here in Coraltus, the fallen city of elves, and what we just did is disrupt the activities of their army by killing their Deadwalker blacksmith, as well as stealing his tools and supplies to supply to our own blacksmith, including this one legendary hammer that both Renko and the elven smith over there are asking for. And I'm probably going to have to give it to one of them. I'm not sure which one of them I want to give to, because I don't really particularly favor either of them, because it doesn't matter what they make, unless they make some truly legendary item. Because, like I keep saying, nothing in these shops are worth buying. But that being said, we're continuously looking on because apparently there's some prisoners as well. And we're just being a little bit thorough and walking in. Alright, just one. Could be an ambush. Yep, it was an ambush. A problem? Damn. These guys are pretty weak by now. I kind of hope the enemy variety picks it up a little bit. Although quite frankly, they are starting to mix up the encounters to where they are getting kind of challenging. I found the most frustrating ones, the ones that are cursed, that have those giant cursed blades. For some odd reason, they take a lot of punishment. They take a lot of punishment, and they deal a lot of punishment too. The ones that have shields on their back, I mean, they could take punishment by virtue of their shields, but for some reason, it's really hard to guard block them. Once their guard is down, then sure, you can deal with them pretty easily, but taking their guard down is surprisingly challenging. These guys. I have no idea if they're super weak against anything because, I mean, all I got is fire, so if they're weak to an element, I don't know what it is. I need to practice getting the perfect block on them down so I can start counterattacking, at least adding to something. Banking on crits is usually what I go on these days. I'm noticing that I'm really starting to just carry a lot of junk around. I keep thinking that maybe I should have put a point in the mule to increase my load by 50 pounds so that way I can at least still run. Because times like this when you're crossing, retreading, and exploring corners, man, I sure miss the ability to run. Let's see. I've been here already. A lot of these places are starting to look alike. Yeah, I've definitely been to the stairwell already. Alright. Can't say I found any prisoners, that's for sure. Alright, so let's see. I get the feeling there could be a lot of expanded materials for this sort of section, in so much that, given how we're already trying to storm Blackthorn or Blackfrost's castle, basically, which is the Elven castle, I wonder, is that the true end of the game, or is this game go a lot further? The reason I say that is because we're about 8 hours into this game, I want to say. And you know what? It's interesting. Most people complain about the length of an RPG being too long by virtue of how long it takes for the game to start up. And by start up, when you start getting into the meat of the plot, meat of the action, start having like full amount of your abilities, things like that. But when RPGs are, like say most action RPGs, like say Kingdom Hearts or this game or Fable or, you know, even Dragon Age or Mass Effect especially, actually, they put you in the action very quickly, and you can start building and growing right away. And the pace goes by so quickly that if you really wanted to, you can finish those games in about 15 hours. And that's including like doing a lot of side quests. You're mostly just burning through. So games like this, when they're about 15-20 hours, people then complain, "Oh, well, that's too short for a game." It's like, I don't know. What is the and I've discussed this point before. What's the happy medium? At what point can you make an action RPG, you know, extend to the length of what's considered satisfactory? Because turn-based RPGs are naturally slower paced anyway. Oh, here's some prisoners.
Head to the southeast. You'll find an entry in the support pillar. Take that passage, and then look for an opening in the cliff face. The rest of the company is hidden there.
Got it. There's another camp of prisoners over there in the west. Not any of our guys, but maybe we should try to free them anyhow.
Prisoners over in the west? I was just in the west.
No.
I didn't see any prisoners.
See you back at the camp. Good luck.
Gonna need it.
Gonna need it. Yeesh, aren't we optimistic? Wait a minute. I was seriously in this direction. I just came from this direction. Don't tell me that they suddenly teleported prisoners in. Unless it was a locked door that I missed. I'd be a little bit disappointed if that was the case. But back to my previous point, you know what? It would be pretty cool if those games did extend to like even longer than that. Because the first time that you go through and you're taking your time and observing every detail, maybe it spills over into 20 hours, maybe even 30 hours. But the subsequent playthroughs are going to be very, very quick because you already know where everything is and there's no more surprise anymore. And that's true of any game, sure. But with slower paced games, like, it's understandable to understand that this game is going to be a lot longer precisely because of its slower pace. And it may not be due to lack of content. In games, especially where you're walking across on foot, you need to take into account how much time you actually spend traveling from point A to point B. Seriously, I was literally just in this room. These guys were not here. Alright, I'm going to have to take a point off to the scenario designer and director on that, because there were some quests I was able to complete early by discovering them and then turning them in, and I was just in this room. These guys were not here.
There's a support pillar in the southeast of the city. You'll come out near the cliff. Follow it and you'll come to a rift. Go in. The elf army is there and they'll take care of you. Thank you.
But anyway, yeah, back to that. When you have a open world game, sometimes they pad game time by having you travel from one side of the map to the other side of the map with limited to no fast travel, especially if it's an area that relies on you fast traveling to an area that you've been to before, which is just about nearly every fast travel. And obviously you've never been there, so you have to walk all the way over there. And all that travel time, you really need to take into account how much you're actually doing of just the actual game. You know? In action games, it's pretty linear most times. Usually just run from point A to point B and do what you gotta do, and then your next progress usually isn't too far. Excuse me, yawning. It's not for lack of combat, I assure you. It's just just late. Anyway. What you can do, if you're trying to keep this a human run, is constantly check before and after decision points in the game, your corruption level. I noticed I was a stat underneath your status, and it should state 0%. And so far I've been keeping it 0%, so I'm an uncorrupted human. And I don't necessarily know how many different endings you're going to have for this. I assume that there will at least be a different ending for a demon ending versus a human ending, but I wonder beyond that how many differences there will be, and preferably if they're going to be superficial differences or not. One thing I noticed with several European-based games is that, like Witcher, Divinity, this, technically even Dragon Age, although it's Canadian, but, you know, whatever, close enough. And there was another one I was thinking of, but they Oh, I think it was Two Worlds 2. I think Risen as well, actually. A lot of those games, actually, when they end, they kind of end leaving you feeling a little incomplete and or depressed. Like, usually the thing you're fighting for gets lost. Usually you end up kind of feeling bad. It's a very serious overtone in the end. And I'm kind of wondering if, like other European games, if it's going to follow the same style. For some odd reason, the Europeans, like, have a very depressing way to end stories. It kind of reminds me of many European fairy and fable tales, or Eurasian at least, you know, from Germany or even all the way over to Russia, where apparently a lot of their fairy tales and fables are all very violent and depressing, and they're there for the purpose of basically scaring you as children, saying that a lot of things you're going to do is just going to kill you or kill somebody else, and people die in very horrible ways. It's like, man, terrible. Hey, more elf bodies. That's right, there were a bunch of elf bodies out here. I should probably do a lap around here and collect it, because I'm almost done, and I definitely need a lap around the city and there. So let me do a lap around here, go towards some of these sentry areas where there were sentries, and check them out. Because I freed the prisoners, I got the smithy stuff. Let me finish up this area over here, and then build some traps for Relmar, and then that should be it. I think we're pretty much done for side quests, and we're going to get ready to storm the castle, no doubt. Because if this game was going to end on a very depressing note, then I imagine a few things will probably happen. Possibility. Just throwing these out there, I don't know if it's the ending, so I'm not going to say spoilers, because I'm just theorizing at this point. Let's see. Depressing possibility number 1. You become an Ice Lord. Depressing number 2. You did so by choice. That is to say, even if you're human, it just became that much easier to corrupt you and become an Ice Lord. Or rather, all the Ice Lords were humans anyway, and so you actually inadvertently became an Ice Lord because you were repelling the demon. Depressing number 3. Edwin kills you and takes your demon, because it's obvious that she's after your demon. But I don't know how far she's going to go for that. Or rather, she most likely is an Ice Lord, probably. Or definitely in league with them, or something like that. Let's see. I guess this go-to stereotypical ending that's depressing. All your friends die. And you're left at some cost, like, it comes down to saving them or saving the world of ice, and you probably have to save them or something like that. It's always one of those things, you know? You have to end up killing your friends or something like that, or you go crazy and they end up having to kill you. There's always some depressing sort of ending. It's like, come on guys, it's okay every once in a while to have a happy ending-ish. Maybe over here in America we're too spoiled by our Disney and stuff like that. And our comic books. Too many happy endings. But when you think about it, there really are a variety of ways this could end, and not all of them are pretty. But we'll find out, whatever the length of this game is. Like I said, most action RPGs, for some reason, cap off around 30 in terms of levels. Some are 20, like, I remember Fallout was 20, I thought that was very interesting. Only when you did the expansion did it extend it up to, surprise surprise, 30. So it's like, why is 30 the magic number? But 30 is a magic number, so the fact that we're already basically close to 20 means, like, man, and this is the second act. Or actually, no, it's the third act, I think. The first one was kind of more of a tutorial chapter, so I don't know if I count that too much. But it's like, how much further are we into this game, and what's the full length of this game? I don't know if it's going to go the distance. I think it might end like closer to 30, and we actually might be seeing among the final chapters here. Like, once we storm the castle, that may be it. This is a dicey situation. See, when they start mixing different enemy types like this, it becomes very dicey. Because I'm frozen, I have to beat this archer first because he's going to kill me before this other guy does. But this other guy's fast and wailing on it, and my other teammate, I mean, Sybil over there is drawing the attention of the big guy. But the big guy is ironically the least threatening person. Getting caught in a bad spot here. Alright, managed to crit on him. That's good. Is he seriously still not dead? Ah, that was terrible. That was a terrible setup. Yeah, mixing up the enemy varieties does add a surprising layer of challenge, ironically, because you have to approach each one of them completely differently and complicating it by adding it all at the same time. Just have to get better, frankly. Alright. While I refight that and retread old ground. More E3 stuff, let's see. I know in recent news, and other RPG news, I know, this is how engaging her situation is. I could fight and play this RPG while talking about other RPGs. It's almost like hanging with one girl talking about another girl. But, let's see, that famous RPG company, Square Enix, is finally back in the black. Which is to say, they've been in financial dilemma and distress for quite a few years, actually. It's not like the mid-90s where everybody nostalgically remembers them for, where they had bestseller hit after bestseller hit, where they had, you know, Final Fantasy VI, and then next year it was Chrono Trigger, and then next year it was Super Mario RPG, and then the year after that it was Final Fantasy VII, and they just had year after year after year of financial success. Not like that anymore. Ironically, they owe a lot to their investment of Eidos for pulling them out. Even though they have this bad habit of being overly optimistic, though, with their sales figures. Like, they overshoot their sales figures by a lot. Like, they seriously thought Tomb Raider was going to sell, like, 6 million plus something, like 5 million. It was a lot. And, like, granted, it did sell a lot, and, incidentally, Tomb Raider is one of the reasons they got back in the black with the remastered version that just got released. That did help significantly. And they thought, like, Hitman Absolution, and Hitman Absolution I thought was a decent game, actually. I didn't mind it. They thought that was going to sell, like, twice as much as what it actually did. And Lightning Returns, I don't know how much they were putting on that, and I played it, and actually I liked Lightning Returns a lot, for a mechanic and gameplay perspective, not so much a story perspective. I'm still filling out the recapitulation for that, and let me tell you, it's like the more I'm chewing on the story, the less appetizing it became. I have no idea what the writers were thinking in this thing. It's just, man, this story got unnecessarily complicated. And the worst part, and not necessarily the most interesting ways. It's like, if you're going to play this game, I suggest playing it just as a game, and not necessarily playing it as some lore-defining Final Fantasy XIII trilogy conclusion. I know there's a lot of speculation about what world at the very... Oh, by the way, spoilers, I suppose, if you haven't played it yet. There's a new world at the very end of the game, and it's a very modern world, very much like our own, incidentally. It's kind of like Earth, but then again, a lot of people are theorizing that what happened is the creation of one of the alternate Fabula Nova Chrysalis worlds, basically. Because there are 3 basic worlds that all use the same mythos. And there's Final Fantasy XIII Trilogy. Then there was going to be Final Fantasy Versus 13, which became Final Fantasy 15. Then there was Final Fantasy Type 0, which I think became Agito Final Fantasy. And that's a 3rd separate interpretation of that world as well. And you see hints of that, because in Lightning Returns you see armor and weapons from the kingdoms of that world. Like, they're mostly just, I'm sure, nods and references, just like everything else. It's not actually anything substantial. But a lot of people are theorizing that what happens is Lightning created the world that will be Final Fantasy 15, which used to be Final Fantasy Versus 13. If this sounds incredibly dull and uninteresting, it's because it kind of is dull and uninteresting, because it's just a fan theory that doesn't really go anywhere. It isn't substantiated by anything. And that's that. Besides, if reports are accurate, then Square Enix won't be coming out with either Kingdom Hearts 3 or Final Fantasy 15 for another year. So probably 2016 is when those games are going to come out. So, whatever. Wait for Dragon Quest, I suppose. I just want Capcom to pick up the slack. I hope Deep Downs is going to deliver, frankly. But we got enough of those elf stones, so let's return them over here to Relmar.
Here's all that I could find. I doubt I'll be able to find any more.
Each stone that you can recover is precious.
Let's change this.
Games like this remind me of Kingdoms of Amalur, where there's so much potential. And Amalur's problem wasn't necessarily the game. I actually really liked the game. I thought it did a great job. Amalur's problem was that the studio went down because I had terrible management. So it's a shame that, I think what was it, Studio 38, I think is what it was called. It's such a shame that they died that way. Such a shame. Because that has such good potential. I would like to have seen that grow into something else. And it got tragically killed before its time. Spiders, for them to branch out into an RPG, for this to be their first contribution to an RPG, I have to say good job. They did a lot of their research. Even if this game ends up being on the short end, even if it ends up not being, people think like if the game's not Game of the Year, then it's not worth anything. That's really shallow-minded. But this has a lot of potential to turn into something, frankly. I'd like to see this go somewhere, because so far I think they did a good job creating solid mechanics. They did a good job putting attention to detail where there needs to be attention. You know, the crafting system looks good. Like, my armor looks really cool. It has really visible effects, as well as actual stat effects. The stat and combat system is really easy to understand. The combat provides a challenge, almost too much in some cases, but definitely still a challenge.
I'll keep it. Given the shape of the arm.
I'm deciding whether I want to give the legendary hammer to this guy or Renko, the other blacksmith. And I'm kind of deciding who has better gear and who might be able to benefit from said hammer. This guy has better gear, frankly, than Renko, I think. I don't think Renko updated. But, let's see. What was I saying? Oh, that's right. Like, I'm glad there's going to be a Risen 3 and a Drakengard 3 this year. Drakengard 3 actually comes out this month. Because I liked that game, and that series was back on the PlayStation 2. It was a really fun series. It wasn't necessarily well known, but it was a well done series. And I'm glad that one's bringing back to new crowds that probably have never played the first two. So I don't know necessarily how that's going to go down. Let's see. Risen 3, I actually liked the Risen series. I really do. I like how your choices really do change how the campaign flows and the allies that you come across and things like that. It's kind of like this game. It's kind of like a lot of other European games where your choices matter and the story is very well thought out. They have attention to detail and stuff like that. It's not the most in-depth game. And there are a lot of technical things that need polishing in that game, I'm not going to deny. But from a gameplay perspective, I'm okay with it. Perfectly fine. And in Risen 2, I kind of like the creative spin to it. There was a lot of potential that they could have done in other angles. Like, I know a lot of people dock it for nice-to-haves that they could have had, but I think that's very unfair to dock a game points off for something it chose not to do just because you wanted to go in that direction. For example, in Risen 2 you play like a pirate, but you have a supernatural edge to you. And a lot of people were complaining, oh, but as a pirate you should be able to sail your ships around and have an open world and fight other pirate ships. I'm like, that would be cool. I'm not lying. And I loved when Black Flag did it, Assassin's Creed. Great job. Loved it. The fact that they chose not to do it is something you just have to deal with. But you shouldn't dock points because they chose not to do that. That's a completely separate game design choice that would create a completely different type of game experience. And they didn't want to create that game experience, so they didn't do it. It wasn't a failure in story. It wasn't a failure in gameplay for what they chose to do. It wasn't a failure in technical. They just chose not to do that. All you wanted was something on your nice-to-have list, but because it didn't have that, yes, you can put it in the wasted potential section, but that doesn't mean the game was bad or worse off for it. Besides, if you're complaining so much from a technical standpoint, why would you want to add an overly technical aspect to it? That makes no sense. I'm defending these games mostly because a lot of people don't defend these games. I won't defend them on everything though, because there are some problems that do need to be addressed in games like that and Two Worlds and stuff like that, and Arcania. There are problems. But the thing is, they're working to improve it. And they still deliver fun experiences, in my opinion. Not for everybody. Not for everybody. These games are not for everybody. Probably only the most hardcore RPG fans, or guys that are used to playing a PC-style RPG. Console RPGs and PC-style RPGs are actually approached subtly differently. But perhaps that's a discussion for another day. What I'm doing right now is I'm basically finishing off my bag, getting a lot of crafting. I want to go ahead and just finish up a lot of this stuff. And thinking about basically what to recycle and stuff like that. Get back some of these materials, maybe get the recycling perk, and just keep going from there. What I'm doing is I'm doing all final checks for when we are probably going to talk to the commander next and storm this castle. As long as I was to storm the castle with the prince slash king, I suppose he's a king now, then I'm going to be fine. Not a fan of that guy. Let's see. Because your options with a lot of these items is either sell it for gold, which I realize I was doing before, but it's kind of useless because these items, there's nothing to buy with your gold. Other than maybe some pre-made items like potions and stuff like that. The only thing worth anything in any shop or worth crafting is potions. That's seriously it. I didn't dip heavily into crossbows, so my crossbow, it's still pretty basic, so it's still pretty weak. But there's nothing worth buying in this game except for potions. Seriously, there really isn't. You can't buy, and all the crafting components that you have to use to craft with are super expensive. So, man. All that, jeez. But I guess we gotta talk, oh, here we go.
Getting out of here as soon as possible. Our contract is over.
Man, you're in a pissy mood as always, Butt Captain. See, he even said it again, Butt Captain. By the way, if you're late on that joke, the reason I call him Butt Captain is because Vulcan keeps referring to him as Butt Captain, because he always says, Butt Captain, and even the captain himself said, why do you keep calling me Butt Captain? No Butt Captains anymore.
This is an important battle. You have
So he's
to
Butt
put
Captain.
blades in it.
Now you listen closely, Vulcan. I am the captain of this company.
Why is he so grouchy right now? Seriously. I know this is a bad situation, but jeez. I'm the captain of this company. This company of like, what, 5 people, not including us and Buffalo? Seriously, I'm gonna duel him for leadership? It didn't even give me the option. I didn't ask for that.
We have to put everything we
I was actually kind of okay with leaving this place. I helped them out as much as I could. I wanted to get to the World Heart. Do I seriously have to duel this guy? Don't get sloppy on me now, Bound by Flame.
Quick and painless.
I didn't ask for it. I mean, I'll do it, actually. But I didn't ask for it. I wonder what happens if you lose the combat. If it's gonna be like Redvar and it just makes you keep fighting until you win, then fine. Man, this guy kicks. That's okay, I got a beat on him. He fights very similar to Redvar. Fortunately, I invested heavily into interrupt resistance, so I'm not getting knocked on my back as much. Okay, this is that camera work angle I was talking about. There's too much stuff in the way. There's too much stuff in the way. Fighting close quarters is not good. You're clipping through me. I always knew it would be you. What? I'm very confused right now. No. Why did I have to kill him? There was no need for this. Are you telling me every time that somebody wants to succeed as captain, somebody has to die? It's a duel to the death? No wonder your company is so small and nobody wants to really join. You seriously want to recruit? By the way, if you want to ascend, you know, we don't really hand out promotions. You either die and survive combat, or you kill the next person up on the command chain.
We must make haste to plan our attack.
Look at him, he's all like, well, that happened. Let's go talk to the prince now. Yeah, there's seriously 5 guys in this room. Alright, well, I guess that's it. So, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time for more Bound by Flame. See ya.